There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
I have a special booktuber guest. She's got a fairly new channel and one that is absolutely delightful. Shelly Swearingen from the coast of South Carolina. Welcome, Shelly.
Hi, thank you for having me.
What a special occasion this is. So I subscribe to your channel, and I haven't watched too many videos, but enough to be able to say very enthusiastically that you are a class act, an elegant, entertaining booktuber, and I'd like you to shout yourself out. Give us an elevator pitch for your channel, Shelly.
An elevator pitch for my channel. Okay, so I love books and reading. I'm currently reading through 1001 children's books that you must read before you grow up as an homage to my passion for children's books. But mostly I talk about books and my love for books and reading. And I also recently got a small dog, and he makes an appearance in every video.
And that's Prince Harry, right?
Prince Harry.
Harry. The name is Harry. Great. And just to clarify, is your channel predominantly about children's lit?
No, it is not. It is about all the literature. So
literature. Well, I don't doubt that, because we are here to talk about a Canadian classic from Quebec that I've never read and is really hard to find, which is why I roped you into coming on to Bite Size Book Chats, because I don't think I know anybody else in the world that's read this book.
Really?
It is The Tin Flint. Let's try that again, shall we? The Tin Flute by Gabrielle Roy. And yours is yours. Yours, I think, is maybe a first edition or something.
Perhaps. It is old. The dust jacket I had to take off while I was reading it because it's starting to split on the sides. Right. But I thought it was such a unique cover because it really does have your main characters all dotted around the sides and named. So that was really interesting because you don't see that nowadays.
That's right. We should say that it was originally published in French in Quebec in 1945, and your translation, I believe, is 1947.
1947.
And so I have this edition, and mine is a different translator. Who is yours?
Mine is Hannah Josephson.
Hannah Josephson, yeah. Now, I don't know which is the better one. Mine is published much later, like in the 80s or something, and it's translated by Alan Brown.
Okay.
What did you think of the writing in yours? Did you like the translation?
I did, especially in some of the opening scenes. She's very atmospheric. So you're hearing the sounds that she's describing. You're seeing the opening scene, I believe, is in a five and dime, so like an old-timey diner, and you're getting this really engaging atmosphere, and I thought that was great.
And I believe one of the main characters works there, right?
Yes, Florentine.
That's right.
She's one of our main characters.
Now, I saw on a Goodreads review, and the Goodreads thing is a little bit confusing, so I don't know which translation this reviewer was talking about, but they thought it was a bit clunky, especially the dialogue. Did you notice that when you were reading? The dialogue was a little clunky?
No, I didn't notice any clunkiness in the dialogue. I thought it sounded like, it was from the 40s.
Which it was.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know if maybe the Goodreads reviewer was
confused.
Maybe it's not, some of it is not completely modern or up to date.
As one would expect, yeah. Well, that's interesting. I don't think your translation is very readily available. And this one, I had to hunt high and low to get it. So it is not easy to find. And maybe it's available on ebook somewhere, but I didn't find that available to me in Japan. So anyway, with all of that as a preamble, tell us about the Tin Flute.
Okay, so the Tin Flute, it starts and it sets you right before World War II and before Canada gets involved in World War II. So it's set in Montreal in the Saint-Henri district, and it really gives the perspective of the Saint-Henri district, very, very poor. So it shows the poverty in the Saint-Henri district right before World War II, and it follows mostly one family with a couple of extra characters. So it follows Florentine's family, who's a young lady working at the Five and Dime, and her father and mother, and they are incredibly, incredibly poor and just really suffering to get money and to figure out where to live. And they have moved a lot because of their financial precariousness. And so the whole story is really built on that foundation. A cast of about 6 main characters.
Okay. And that was about the right amount for a novel of this length? It wasn't overly populated for you?
No, it was. It talks about Florentine and then her mother and father. And so in that way, you're really getting the dynamics of their relationships and how their dynamics are working.
We're not going to give any spoilers, so I'll say this and you will answer in a way that doesn't give any spoilers. But I believe that the main character, this waitress, Florentine is her name,
Florentine,
is unlucky in love.
She is a young lady looking for love, and she's very young in her experience. And so as she's on this journey, there are these moments that shows her inexperience. So they're a bit cringy, I would say, a cringe moment more than once.
Okay, well, that's a very non-spoilery way to describe it, and you've piqued my interest. Character-driven novel.
It's character-driven, but there is also bubbling underneath the surface Canada's involvement in World War II.
Yes.
And that was really interesting because I didn't know much about the Canadian involvement. And so there are times through characters where you see why somebody would want to sign up for war. Even very early on, there's these discussions at the bar as to why somebody would go to war or sign up in it, whether it be for money or humanity purposes or to find purpose in oneself. And so it explores all of that, but all through the lens of the characters, which was really interesting.
Yeah. Was there stuff about being a French Canadian, Quebec identity, Quebec nationalism in the novel?
Not necessarily, no.
No.
There is a scene, and I won't spoil it, but there's a scene later on that has to do with maple syrup. And I was like, that is the most Canadian thing that ever did Canadian. That's what I said to my group. I read it with a group. And I thought that was funny. But other than that, and street names or the town, you almost wouldn't know that it was set in the French Canadian district.
Right. Okay. Interesting. And, a French Canadian reader might see a lot of things that you or I would miss, right?
True.
In English translation.
True.
That's interesting.
That actually segues really nicely into how I came about to the
book.
book.
That was going to be my next question. So please tell us, how did you happen upon this book? Is this possibly first edition?
Okay, well, Elizabeth, she's also on BookTube. We started about the same time, so about 5 months ago. She is French Canadian, and she is a translator, not of novels, but she's a translator.
Fantastic.
By trade.
What's her channel name?
Her channel name is Bookins and Books.
Oh, I didn't have the name and the channel name put together, but I certainly am aware of her and a subscriber.
Yes, yeah. And so she spoke really highly of the book. And in the comments, I told her how much the book sounded really great, and I couldn't wait to read it. And then through the comments, a little group formed. And so I roped several people in. And so it was a group of 4 of us, and we all read it together. And that's how I came to read it.
Shelly, this is great. Thank you so much. I hope you'll come back.
Oh, well, I hope you'll have me back.
I shall. I have found a new guest for Bite Size Book Chats, Mimi from New Delhi in India. Welcome, Mimi.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for having me.
It's so nice to have you here. And you are a wonderful bookstagrammer, and I found you there, and you wrote a powerful review of the novella that I've invited you here to tell us about, and that is Elena Ferrante's novella, The Lost Daughter, which was translated into English by Anne Goldstein. I'm going to link directly to Mimi's review of this, and she's going to tell us why she loved it so much.
I really related with this book because she talks about motherhood, something that I will probably be in that phase, a few years from now. And having read Rachel Cusk's life's work, I found a lot of similarities between the two books. Questions that Cusk raised was somewhere answered in this book, The Lost Daughter. And Kusk, who in her book talks about all these struggles. In fact, she begins 40 weeks when she's just about to deliver her baby, the struggles, during pregnancy and stuff, and how she, right up till I think her daughter is about 2 years old, 3 years old, like a toddler, and how Elena Ferrante has depicted that. And it's always that we always put women on a pedestal and have these, huge expectations that they'll be wonderful mothers and have to be a wonderful mother because it comes inherently, have those maternal instincts and develop all of that from a very young age. And I just feel with The Lost Daughter, because our main protagonist, Leda Caruso, her daughters are now with their father. She's separated from her husband.
And they're adult daughters, right?
Adult daughters, like they're in their 20s. Both of them are in their 20s. And how Ferrante does really well this whole depiction of a woman in her late 40s, and she's tired and she's in search of that peace and what she hasn't had when she was raising her daughters. But and with this peace that she's seeking, she's also that's dark side of herself that a lot of us will not even talk about in open. It's more like a taboo that mothers cannot show, like even women for that matter cannot show angst or rage. And so I just feel it's wonderful to have all these things in such a short format. And
it's 140 pages.
Yeah, 140 pages.
So she's footloose and fancy free. Her kids go off to their dad who lives in Toronto.
Yes.
And she goes, where does she go? She goes to meet a friend.
No, she's on her own. She goes for a solo trip. Yeah. Yes.
To
she
the
goes to
Ionian coast?
Ionian coast, yes. There she packs a bag and she's there for about 2 months, 3 months, from July through August, I suppose, a month and a half. Mm-hmm. And there she meets this very boisterous family who are there, holidaying also. So Nina and her daughter, Elena, and of course her doll. I just feel that all of these characters really, they are very different from each other, but they bind together really well.
And Nina is a young mother.
Nina is a young mother, yes.
And her daughter would be
in her early 20s, yes.
Early 20s, and so the daughter is very...
about three.
And Leda gets attached to them. And there's something about the connection between Nina and Leda where Nina reminds Leda of stuff.
Leda is actually on the beach, resting. Then she spots Nina and her daughter, Elena. And I think looking at that mother-daughter bond and how beautiful that is, I think it reminded her of her relationship with her daughters. I won't go into the details, but yeah, she felt that she wasn't like a good mother. There are passages where she talks about having failed as a mother.
Leda feels a kind of a failed mother, and she sees Nina as a good mother.
She sees her, she appreciates her beauty because she's young and all of that. And for me, I think she misses that sort of relationship which she probably never had with her daughters. And she also reminisces on those memories that she had with her own mom, Leda had with her own mom. And apparently her mom was also not very attached to her. And she doesn't have very fond memories of being with her mother and her mother being affectionate. And so I think this is more like a generational sort of a thing.
And well, we're not going to go into any spoilers. There's a pivotal moment later in the novella where Nina discloses a secret to Leda, and that ends up a whole bunch of things happen flowing out of that I think the dark energies of where Leda is at in her life get all wrapped up in that. Would that be fair to say?
I'm not sure if you can call it a secret.
Okay.
Because while they're holidaying, a lot of things happen, and Leda eventually starts having these conversations with Nina. And because Leda, she sees that, she's a young mother, she shares some of her experiences, when she was a mother and how difficult it was to raise both her girls.
And you really connected deeply with this work of fiction. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was that you really loved so much about it?
I think being a woman, most importantly, I think I feel that connect with this book very strongly. And the fact that every time we've talked about motherhood, it's always been happy moments, and what is being shown to us that oh, everything is going to be happy. But I've entered this age of 30s, and you begin to think of family planning and stuff, and then to come across such books that talk about not just beautiful moments but also the low phases. It's important. I just feel I'm at that stage where I don't want anything to be taken at face value. I want to see
What's underneath. And
yeah.
I think this is where I will start. I have not read any Elena Ferrante. Mei Mei, thank you so much for coming on and telling us about it.
Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you for having me.
I am here with a subscriber of mine, Erin from Massachusetts. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you, Thron.
We are also Goodreads friends, and it took me a while to put the Goodreads and the comments that Erin leaves on my BookTube channel together, but we finally did, and I saw that she has been reading this Native American novel, Even As We Breathe, by Annette Saunooke, Clapsaddle, which came out in 2020. Let me quickly go over my story. I am reading opening chapters and self-contained complete short stories for about an hour a day to my friend Lindy. She has just launched her own BookTube channel, Lindy's Magpie Reads. She is getting over a concussion right now, and she can't read. And she reads twice as much as I do, and I read a whole lot. So I've been reading to her on Voxer, and one of the novels that I pulled off my shelf because I was curious to see what it sounded like was this novel. I read the first chapter or whatever it was, the first 10 pages to her, and I loved it. So then when I saw that you had just recently finished reading it, I thought, okay, this is a bite-sized chat I'm dying to have. So Erin, tell us about this book.
It's set during World War II in North Carolina. Main character is a 20-year-old boy, County, who is a Cherokee, and he's grown up on the reservation, and he's going through the typical adolescent angst of wanting a bigger world and trying to figure out what he wants to do with his life. He has not known his parents. He's been raised by his grandmother, and his father died in World War I, but he's been told lots of stories about how his father had died, but he never feels like he's gotten the full story. His grandmother has told him some stuff. His uncle helps his uncle out a lot. He doesn't live with him, but he helps him out almost every day, does a lot of chores, and he never feels like he lives up. So he's another one of the reasons why he wants to get away, because he's always feel like his uncle's putting him down.
Oh.
So this summer that the story takes place, so World War II has started, and a bunch of foreign diplomats, mainly I think from the Axis nations, Japan, Germany, Italy, have been put in this resort in Asheville, North Carolina, I think, right outside of the reservation, as kind of like enemies, but in like a gilded cage, like they're in this resort, and so he goes there to work the grounds. He's just going to be a grounds worker to save money to go to college, as he thinks he'd like to try and go to college, although he doesn't know if he can. And so the story unfolds from there. He meets a girl from the reservation. He drives her down, and he kind of gets this huge crush on her. She also kind of wants to get out of Dodge. Eventually, she's working as I think a maid of some kind in the house, and they form this in friendship that he wants to be more. And that's kind of like the setup.
Well,
and
the setup is perfect. So you have done a fabulous job setting it up. Just before we started this recorded chat, you said that it's very much of a character-driven novel. So
yes.
Tell us more about what you liked about the character work in this novel.
Like, you have been trying to read a lot of Native American literature, and a lot of it can definitely be the standard story about, going away. It's a lot of abuse and alcoholism and drug abuse and being sent away to the schools. And that's not absent in this novel. But on the other hand, this core of the novel was very warm. The characters were, in spite of the uncle who was always so mean to him, his grandmother, who he calls Lishi, which I guess is the Cherokee term for a maternal grandfather, even though it's his paternal grandfather that comes up at some point in the story, that etymological difference in why he thinks he calls her the other term. It had a warm heart to it somehow. I really liked these characters and the story, as I wouldn't call it plot driven. I kind of didn't care where the story took me, but it took me all sorts of places I didn't see coming, but it wasn't being driven by the plot. There's a little mystery comes up later on, but that's, I wouldn't say, the core of the novel. It happens very late.
Well, you and I are two peas in a pod, because I don't think there's a lot of plot, a lot of things going on, but I'm more interested in the characters. And so this sounds fabulous. And I could feel that warm-heartedness in the first 10 pages or the first chapter that I read to my friend the other day. And it really does sound good. This is Annette Clapsaddle's first novel, and she is a member of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, EBCI. She edits the Journal of Cherokee Studies, and she looks like quite a young woman. And so this is her first anything, I think. Tell us a little bit more about the grandma.
Yeah, the grandma, she's kind of the old matriarch of the family. And you learn in kind of a backstory that she kind of took in, I think, the mother as well as a child. So she kind of semi-raised his mother, who I can't even remember exactly. She died when he was very young, maybe in childbirth, or if not, when he was young enough not to remember her. So he doesn't remember either of his parents. And so his grandmother pretty much raises him and as a mother. Some plotty stuff does ensue with her later on, but again, that's neither here nor there. And he doesn't see her much. He comes home on the weekends, sometimes during the summer, and at one point decides not to, but then again, more plot ensues. It's not a plotless novel. It's not one of those things where, well, nothing happened. You know what I mean? For people who do like plot.
Yeah, you and I looked at the synopsis. So the Goodreads synopsis, I think, tells too much of the story, but there's a lot of things happening in this novel, definitely.
A lot of things definitely do happen.
How lovely. Yeah. I can't wait to get to this novel.
I hope you like it as much as I do.
Yeah, I expect, based on what you're telling me about it and what I thought and felt reading that first 10 pages to my friend Lindy, that I very much will. So, Erin, this is your debut appearance on Bite Size Book Chats, but you'll come back, right?
If you ask me, sure.
You'll never guess who this is. This is one of my, I think, long-term subscribers, Teresa from Northern New Jersey. Teresa, welcome.
Thank you, Sean. It's really good to be here.
What a delight that we have met finally, because we follow each other on various social media, and you're here to tell us about it's a novel by a Canadian author, but it certainly doesn't have anything else to do with Canada. It is called Tenderness by Alison MacLeod, which is, what would you say, the main character, or one of the main characters is D.H. Lawrence, and another one might be Jackie Kennedy. So I am very curious to hear about it. Tell us about it, Teresa.
Well, basically, it's the origin story of the writing of Lady Chatterley's Lover, and then the subsequent 30 years later trial for indecency in Great Britain by the publishing house Penguin. And that's basically what it is. It's a true story. There are 15 pages of endnotes. MacLeod did a ton of research, looked at a lot of primary resources.
Okay, can I stop you? So is it a novelization of a true story, or is it a true story?
It is both.
Wow.
But if I left it at that, I think it would sound kind of dreary and academic, and it's not that at all.
Okay.
What she's done is really use this as a jumping off point to tell a larger story of freedom of artistic expression and the ongoing fight for freedom of speech and even freedom of thought. She has a subplot, wisely, I think, involving Jackie Kennedy. At some point, she read that Jackie Kennedy had commented that she had read Lady Chatterley's Lover and admired the book, which was a pretty brave thing to say back in those days.
Sure.
At the same time, she found an FBI file, or at least read where there was an FBI file on the publication of Lady Chatterley's Lover. And so then she created this subplot where the United States has a vested interest in exposing Jackie Kennedy's delight with the book because J. Edgar Hoover's trying to undermine the election of John F. Kennedy. which I'm sure he probably was.
Yes.
But really, she creates this character, this very hapless FBI agent called Mel Harding, and this whole event which underpins where she's heading in the ending. The book opens with D.H. Lawrence visiting the Meynalls, which is a name I'm not familiar with. It's a writer, Alice Meynall. She's a British writer. They were a fairly well-off family. They were artistic. She often invited writers to come stay at their cottages, and Lawrence and his wife Frida come to stay there while he's working on the Rainbow during World War I. During the time he's there, he writes this short story involving the family. They're thinly disguised. He really betrays them. And when he leaves the compound after staying there for about 6 months, the family really severs all relationship with him. The family is going to appear in very interesting ways 30 years later at the trial. And then, of course, the trial brings out all of these literary luminaries who either will or won't support D.H. Lawrence, E.M. Forster, T.S. Eliot, Virginia Woolf. It's really literary history before your eyes with actual trial presentation. And then a really interesting story with Rebecca West, who may or may not have been trying to subvert the whole publication of the book until you have to read it to find out. But it's really an interesting story. And I think the biggest thing I would say about it is that, as I said, it could be very dreary and academic. You know, God knows Lawrence is very dour personality. But MacLeod has a real way of, she has a very strong authorial voice in this. And it's a tone of curiosity and delight. And I would even say a bit of cheekiness, because the trial is very funny.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. It's a really interesting, sweeping look at where we were artistically during that time period, and, you know, really where we still are.
Right. Now, what I want to make sure I understand is the main trial was in the UK, but was there also a trial in America?
There was not really a trial, and the book doesn't deal a lot with this, so I can't really speak to this, but Grove Press was brought up on some, I think they were fined, but it was through the post office because I think they, I don't know the details of that.
Okay, but that's not part of this story anyway.
No, the big trial that settled the issue was Penguin Publishing in Great Britain. And I think that's why J. Edgar Hoover was so interested in it, because that was going to make or break where the pieces fell with Lady Chatterley's level.
In the synopsis, it says Jackie Kennedy attends the trial, but maybe that's not true.
She does not. And she didn't in real life, and she doesn't in the book.
Oh, so the synopsis is just wrong.
It's wrong.
That's crazy.
She does attend a hearing, and I think that's in America and having to do with Grove Press. And so she's photographed surreptitiously by the FBI. But that is untrue. You know, that never happened.
She imagined. Alison MacLeod imagined that. Okay.
Right.
And did it feel like Jackie?
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
And she draws some interesting parallels. You know, Jackie Kennedy never expounded on why she did admire Lady Chatterley's lover, but MacLeod as an author draws parallels between 29-year-old Jackie, who's in the situation she's in, and 29-year-old Lady Chatterley.
Oh, interesting.
So it is interesting.
This is 640 pages. Did it feel like it was not too? Did it feel too long or just about right?
I'm one of those people who doesn't understand why writers can't keep to under 400 pages.
Yes.
And I think editors have totally given up themselves to writers.
I'm with you.
I will say that I zipped through this book, and I think it's actually with the endnotes and her afterword, 640, but it's probably just shy of 600 pages. But no, I found it a page turner. It was delightful is a word that keeps popping up, because she was never heavy-handed with it. She trusted she had a good story to tell. She had something she wanted to say. She trusted her readership, and it was a page turner.
So this is the exception to the rule then. It didn't feel too long.
No, for me, every reader. rings themselves. But no, for me, it didn't.
Okay. Have you read anything else by the author?
I have not. I had never heard of her before.
Her short story collection was not a success for me. It was a bail, but that doesn't. You certainly sold me on giving this one a try. All the Beloved Ghosts. But this one sounds really interesting. She's written other books. I'm not sure if they're short story collections or novels, but she's written a fair amount. Oh my goodness. I'm wondering if Goodreads has aggregated a bunch of Alison MacLeods, because these all don't seem like they might have been by the same author. But and I also did a bit of a deep dive just before we chatted. Are you familiar with the Canadian writer Alistair MacLeod?
Yes, I know the name.
Yeah. So they're both from Nova Scotia, or their family goes back to Nova Scotia. And so I thought, is she his daughter? And she's not. But she knew him, and when she went into, I think, MFA or whatever her university creative writing program was, she was torn between studying under Alistair MacLeod at the University of Windsor in Ontario, Canada, and somebody else whose name I can't remember in the UK. But so she had a literary relationship with Alistair MacLeod, but no relation as far as I've been able to tell. Certainly not his daughter. He only had one daughter, and that's not her.
I will tell you that not only had I not read Alison MacLeod, but I really have never read D.H. Lawrence. I read Lady Chatterley's Lover back in college, as one does. That was the only exposure I had to him. After this book, it really makes me want to go back and pick up some of his things. She made his writing sound very interesting.
I have read Sons and Lovers in the last 3 or 4 years and really, really loved it. So I want to read more by him. I must have read No, I don't know if I ever read. I just watched a certain scene in the movie about 8,000 times.
So did I. We all did.
Well, this is fascinating. So Jackie Kennedy, D.H. Lawrence, what's not to love? This was a great conversation. And Teresa, I hope you'll come back.
Oh, absolutely.